Um, so um, I'm back with similar thoughts that I shared in earlier videos. I'm trying to compile them in a little bit of different way. I think I'm getting better at sort of presentation a little bit. So the topic again, it's I think it's going to be the same topic for a while because looks like this topic, in one way or the other, this keeps coming back, and this is sort of, at least in on the Indian context, is one of the main divides. And we as a liberal, and I'm going to call myself a liberal, unless any of you guys want to debate with me and prove me wrong. So my position has been that Hindus are the original liberals, and you know, if you were to divide the entire world on the left or right side, Hindus will be on the left side, and the left liberal side, and not just recent times. From the very ancient times, a lot of the liberal principle and values, uh, Hindus are one of those group of people that have been talking about those values and following those values uh, for many centuries. So the Indian liberals, my position on that is that they're fake. Like there is no original thought, and that's where I want to sort of keep hammering this point out, that Indian liberals need introspection. So let's get into some of the slides that are prepared. So back to original thought, and that's where uh, nobody actually on the liberal circles, either in the Western world or in on the Indian side, ever talks about freedom of movement. Now, this is, a single most important sign that exposes uh, the hypocrisy of liberalism, or the modern day liberalism. They're only as liberal as they can afford to be, right? Uh, as liberal as it will not cause them any discomfort. And I've said that before. So, they talk about freedom of speech and democracy everywhere. Why not freedom of movement, right? Isn't that a very basic and fundamental right as well? I should be able to move, right? Uh, uh, Especially when we have such imbalances, right? And again, I know this is one theme that I'll be repeating a lot, because this is something that nobody talks about. I was looking at the UN human rights page, and even there it says, like, it talks about freedom of movement, but then it says restricted to your national boundaries. So for all the talk about nationalism, the Western world imposes nationalism. They have these strict boundaries that they cannot do away with, right? Because they've captured large parts of Earth and large parts of Earth's land and resources. They're not going to share that, right? And to me, that immediately, like we talk about, we're now in a new age. It's a liberal world, and we're talking about human rights, but nobody talks about right to uh, clean air, right to uh, move anywhere or any part of in any part of the world, right to clean drinking water. You don't talk about those things. You can't, right? Uh, Again, we'll probably at some point in time, this climate change and global warming again, whether we like it or not, it you, a big responsibility of that goes back to the Western world. Uh, so this is something that I'd like to see people start talking about. You know, whether or not they have democracy or not, whether or not they have freedom of speech, I'd say give them freedom of movement, and you will immediately change their situation, right? Next is why are we concerned about an imagined Hindu dystopia? Now, this is again very fascinating, right? You know, it's always like I was, you know, again the usual suspects, The Wire, and I'm forgetting her name, uh, but they're always like, oh, I was watching this movie where they're depicting Hindu dystopia. Why do you have to imagine Hindu dystopia, right? Uh, uh, like, so, okay, we're concerned about imagined Hindu dystopia, but we're not concerned about the modern world where only, a few years back, hijackers slammed jet airlines into two high-rise buildings and knocked them over. Like we're not gonna like we are in a dystopian world. We're living in a dystopian world. We're not gonna talk about Yazidis. We're not gonna talk about the plight of Kashmiri Pandits. Like we're not gonna talk about Kamlesh Tiwari. Why? uh, because it doesn't suit. Like what? So again, what are you trying to defend, right? At least be honest, right? At least be honest that yeah, it all exists, right? You can then share the concern that wait a second, we need to be careful here. That okay, there is a segment, there is a problem, but if we show it to the world, there might be a reaction. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that, right? That's a genuine concern. But you cannot just hide that all away and then lie and then create something that doesn't exist. Like, why do we have to imagine the future? Let's just go in the past and look at track record of different groups of people. And you go further back, there's a nuclear bombs being dropped on people, right? Isn't that dystopian? Like, what else will be in your dystopia, right? If not, and then you keep looking around you, you keep going back 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200, 300, 500 years, and there is a ton of dystopian violence, right? And see who's committing it, right? What group of people are committing it, right? And then our concerns should be based on that, not something imagined, right? Again, I'm not sure. Like, if we're going to imagine, then we can imagine anything, right? Why, how are we coming to a conclusion that one group of people who don't have any track record, as bad as other group of people, for them, we're just going to imagine that they're going to be worse in future. Seems very dishonest. Okay, next one. Why do we ape West blindly? Like this is again, I completely am dumbfounded when I think about this. So, for example, even if you go 3, 4 decades back, there was this whole thing, freedom to eat what you like. Even now, like, the likes of work that there should be freedom to eat what you like. Only recently, and that too, some sections of Western liberals have realized that, oh, wait a minute, you know, uh, we love dogs, but eat cows. That's hypocritical, and that's not good. We should just love all animals. That has dawned on them, like, in last 10 years. And then it's boomeranging back in India, coming like it just does the entire loop and comes back to India, and Indian liberals start aping that, veganism and all that stuff. But again, look at the history, right? You again go back. What's the least meat consuming group of people in the world, right? Who has what group of people, what part of the world has a very rich history of vegetarianism? What part of what part of the planet, animals already have received that kindness and sympathy that now only now we're seeing some parts or some section of the Western society have woken up to. Like, why are we so uh, why do we again? Okay, can't yes again. So I think I made my point here. All right, next one. Why don't we see through the fraud of secularism? So this again is so in your face, right? Again, it's going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be the meat thing, right? Now, finally, the West is recognizing meat is not good, and we need to be sympathetic to all animals. In the same way, they're going to realize that the plural thought of Indians and Hindus when it comes to gods and religion, that's the only way. There is no other way. We talk about pluralism, and the only people who follow pluralism in everything, including their gods and religion, is Hindus, right? I mean, look at the diversity you have and have had for many centuries, right? Uh, and actually, West is finally realizing. I mean, why the entire need for secularism and atheism is because of monotheistic religions. That need doesn't even arise in a polytheistic tradition, because in a plural polytheistic tradition you can follow any path, so the conflict doesn't even arise in any sense. There is no conflict. um, same goes for atheism. Like I say that uh, you know there can I mean, again, these new age atheists are so dumb, pardon me for using this word, but they don't realize that once you um, get into a more deeper level of studying Hinduism and some of the wisdom, spiritual and other wisdom, or even philosophical wisdom that comes from that part of the world, you realize that a very high, sophisticated level of thinking about God, which is almost atheistic, even more atheistic than like one of the phrases is like that you are that, like when we say that you are the God, right? You are that ultimate reality. Now there cannot be anything more atheistic thought than that, and I challenge any atheist uh, to debate me on that. Um, you when you're saying like God does not exist, that is a meaningless phrase, but you again, to me it's like it's a very clever philosophical statement. When you say you are the God, you've sort of flipped that on his head and like answered two questions at once, right? You've answered the God question as well as you've answered who am I question at the same time. So, like, such high, sophisticated thought process that even today, is again in some Western liberal circles, it is valued so highly. Like all these Dhruv Rathis and Akash Banerjees are so shallow and borderline dumb. Like again, I hear. hear them and listen them. I can barely, listen for a few minutes, and it's like all the arguments are so shallow. There is no substance there. Like, if you really want to understand the deeper spiritual wisdom coming out from Hindu philosophies, you should listen to Alan Watts if you haven't yet. I mean, I've listened to so many videos of Alan Watts now, and even now I will find some of his lectures and some of like it's like there's a treasure there, hours and hours of lecture, and then so many of them I've listened multiple times, and I'll probably will continue to do so. Uh, it's that good. So I will highly recommend to all the liberals out there um, to listen to Alan Watts. It's available on YouTube. Okay, next one. West cares about India's poor. Now, this is again like again out of this whole Rihanna thing and everything. It's like West cares about Indian poor. Their corporates are better. China cares about us. Our corporates are bad. Amazon is good. Like it's like again, we're not applying our mind, guys. You gotta think through. They don't even care about your educated ones. They kick out your highly educated ones that they guard their borders like as if it's their land gifted to them by God. Um, you know, I don't know if you guys know. I have here in the slide just as an example. The population density of USA is 93 people per square mile, and there's 416 per square mile. If they really cared about, and this is the point I've made before as well, and I'm gonna continue to hammer this point again and again. If they really cared about poor, democracy, secularism, pluralism, diversity, and all they need to do was like, okay, let's take 100 people per square mile from India, the poorest of poor and the farmers, and put them in USA, right? It's win-win for everybody, right? What's the problem? Yeah, there cannot be anything more liberal than that. It won't happen. They will not do it. They don't care, right? Nobody cares. Like again, we have to be practical at some level. Everybody has their self-interest, right? Um, and to think about like uh, again, this is probably a harder uh, uh, harder to sort of think about and say that it doesn't make sense. At some levels, you can say, "Oh, it's their home. It doesn't make sense to me." But think about another thing, like all the talk about climate change, and even if we just say, "Okay, you know, let's hold accountable uh, uh, the countries who have over time emitted most amount of CO2." You can't even so again we imagine as if West is this epitome of liberalism and fair, and they're like the gods, like they can't do anything wrong. They will not, you know, for a long time this was this wasn't a part of conversation. Most of the time the conversation is, the developing nations and the progressing nations, they're going to be the biggest polluters in future. We need to curb them. What we did in the past, who cares? And and then we think of them so highly as if they're like the fair and liberal and fair and lovelies of the world. Why will not we challenge them? Why can't we see that fraud, right? When Rihanna is and others care about the democracy and secularism, it's all very very shallow and very superficial. We need to see through that. Okay, next. Why does only India have pacifists? Again, one of my points that I've repeated often here. Have you ever wondered why nobody else in the world produces Buddhas and Gandhis? Why is it that only Hindus have to be pacifist, right? Over and over again and again. They're proud of their generals, they're proud of their Alexanders, they're proud of their Tamurlans, they're proud of their Aurangzebs, they're proud of their Maos, they're proud of their Stalins, they're proud of their wars. They're proud of their nuclear arsenal, and we, on the other hand, are made to feel ashamed of our warriors, of our defenders. Our Maharanas and Shivajis is like you got to feel ashamed because they came in between you and the invaders, and they protected you, so you should feel ashamed about them. Or maybe they were not successful, they tried or they failed, so then you should, I mean, you deserve to be invaded in some sense. It's it's like high time. Like, if the liberals and, other groups really want an honest conversation, you have to stop lying. Like, this lying doesn't even help. Like, whatever your motives are with this lying, yes, you can have a certain group of people brainwashed, but ultimately the truth comes out like in various forms. For example, truth comes out as 9/11. Truth comes out as Samuel Patty. Truth comes out as war on terror. Like, Hindus are not the aggressive bunch. If you think about in terms of relative aggressiveness. If you rank different group of people around the world, Hindus will probably be in the bottom when it comes to being aggressive. And that's the truth. Now, can that change? Can they react back? Yeah, like they're now uh, potentially, you know, have been pushed to the corner, right? And if all the different groups are going to almost gang up on them, ultimately there will be a reaction, right? And that's very natural, right? If that's what the world wants, and if that's what we want to avoid, at least we have to be honest, right? Uh, at least on the liberal side of things, you have to be have honest conversation, and you can talk about that potential reaction. But then, if it hasn't happened so far, then there is something to be said about that. Okay, and then so this again, it gets so overlooked. Like, we want secularism, we want democracy, but only for Hindus. We don't want that for communists. We don't want that for other religious nations. And somehow we're just restricted to, like, we just need to keep Hindus down and suppressed and pacified. Others can do whatever they like. We don't care. Like, have you ever seen anybody campaigning against non-democratic nations or religious nations? No, like the Indian liberals don't care about that. On the other hand, they love it. Like so there's no democracy in China, right? But if you ban Chinese app, there is a huge reaction, right? But at the same time, they hate Indian corporates, right? So Indian corporates are greedy. They're going to do bad things. But Chinese corporations are good. We should not ban them. American corporations are good. Monsanto is good. Ambani is bad. Like, we gotta think and apply our minds, right? It's not rocket science. It's simple in our face. It's just that we need reminders because what's happening is it's a propaganda and brainwashing technique that they pump in these lies day in, day out, that you lose sight of simple things, right? So you have to remind yourself again and again. You almost like you write it down somewhere that, okay, what are the most fundamental truths here that I need to always uh, keep those in mind, right? Whenever we're doing this kind of analysis. I mean, we should actually actively start campaigning for democracy and for secularism all around the world, right? I mean, that's where Indian liberals should campaign actually, if we really care about democracy and secularism. All right, that's it. Let's start applying our minds. Thank you for listening. One other food for thought, I hear it so many times. It's like, people making an argument. Whenever they talk about meat eating, they'll say, but you guys kill vegetables and fruits. And again, that it's so strange that nobody takes, nobody ever thinks about that when you're eating an apple, you're actually not killing an apple. You got to think about this. It's a very simple logic. You don't even need to be a scientist or a high IQ person to get to that conclusion. Uh, so when you're eating an apple, you're actually helping apple spread its seeds. That's the whole purpose of apple, right? It falls down. Some animal will eat it, then they will go somewhere else, poop the seeds out, and then a new tree will grow. So imagine, what spreading seeds is like, right? What spreading seeds is to you is the same to the apple, right? And other vegetables. So most fruits and vegetables, when you eat them, it's orgasmic for them, right? Think about that. The only way you can kill an apple is when you go and kill the apple tree itself. All right. Thank you guys.